In the morning, we saw the Blace necropolis in all its glory. It formerly contained a quantity of statues, of which only 9 have survived. 2, still standing vertically, stand out in particular. The others are overturned and partially buried. Statues, also called Nisani, are standing stone monuments over the graves of the last Bosnian Christians and the first Muslims in Bosnia and Herzegovina in the 15th and 16th centuries. Some are steels that end straight or like a roof on 2 or 3 sides, and some are quadrilateral or polygonal columns of a prism ending in a straight or hemisphere at the top. The history of the stone tombstones is not fully known. Around the same time that the Croats fought the Bulgarians in the 10th century, a Christian religious sect was forming in the Balkans. The Bogomils opposed Vandalism under Tsar Peter I of Bulgaria. They were considered heretics by both the Catholic and Orthodox churches for advocating a more dualistic doctrine that left little room for official hierarchies within these denominations. While some scholars believe that the Bogomils were the first to start a tradition of carved stone tombstones, others point out that they are a cultural rather than a religious phenomenon of the Bosnian sect. In those days, carving your own statue was a lifetime's work. They represented a profession or something important for which you wanted to be remembered. The settlement of Blace where we stayed is basically just ruins. They are evidence that the rural life used to take place here, but for some reason people emigrated out. Only the stone foundations of the houses have remained, stimulating the imagination to speculate what life could have looked like here in the past. The lake I mentioned in episode 5 is located at an altitude of 1150 meters. It has no tributaries, but according to local residents, it has a hydrogeological connection with the Black Spring in the Rakitnica Canyon, through which the water flows into the river. Residents tried to plug this outlet so that the water remains in the basin longer during summer, but this did not bring the expected result. Probably, these not very favorable conditions made people living here decide to look for a better life somewhere else. Or maybe war. Look out! There are supposedly leeches in the lake. Geographically, Mount Pilašnica can be divided into the Bosnian side, facing Hadžići, Pazarić, Trnovo and Rastelnica on the northern slopes, where there are no permanent habitats, and the Herzegovina side, on the southern slopes, with permanently inhabited villages. Blace is situated on the plateau below Lovnica, a branch of Pilašnica, forming a triangle with the villages of Čuhovići and Brdolje. To the east and south of the village there is a large Rakitnica gorge, from which there is a view of the peaks of Visočica. The village is located at an altitude of 1215 meters and administratively belongs to the municipality of Konjic. The town of Konjic is about 12 kilometers to the southeast as the crow flies. As I mentioned, apart from the beautiful views from almost every side, this place is almost uninhabited. The amount of ruins is overwhelming, and if it wasn't for one single settlement where signs of life could be observed, this place would look like a ghost village. This time we managed to move relatively early, and following the tracks visible in the grass, we headed southwest. Treeless pastures quickly turned into forest tracks, and after less than 4 kilometers we came across the first obstacle. As you can see from my waypoints, we didn't follow any official trail, moving along the northern edge of the Rakitnica Canyon. Therefore, sooner or later, some major or minor obstacles could be expected. Fortunately, these types of overturned dry stumps were not a major problem. In fact, You could try not to pay too much attention to it and just drive on, but it was a pity to risk damaging the body even knowing that my Defender has a Line-X armor coating. Therefore, I decided to drag those branches a little with the winch. Well, I have absolutely no idea why I don't have footage of this particular action on my hard drive, but it wasn't spectacular, thankfully. I simply moved back several meters with the branches attached to the winch rope to a place where it was possible to avoid them, and that was the end of the whole operation. However, if you think that we have traveled far, you are mistaken. After several dozen meters, it turned out that the farther trail was completely impossible because someone tried very hard to make it so. So we had to get to the road existing on the map by going down the slope. Yep, I'm swearing here, because in my own car I was quite unexpectedly attacked by ants. The farther route led along the spectacular canyon of the Rakitnica River. This section that you can see here is past the village of Dubociani, a village situated on the right bank of the Rakitnica River, a few kilometers from its confluence with the Neretva, in a valley surrounded by hills. The Rakitnica River, the main tributary of the Neretva, stretches between Bielaśnica and Wysocica, creating an amazing 26 kilometers long canyon. It is one of the most beautiful canyons you can find in Europe. Reaching a height of 800 meters, it is the second deepest canyon in Europe and is called the most unexplored. The canyon was first explored in 1956 when a group of journalists, mountaineers, naturalists and soldiers spent 10 days trying to reach the Neretva in order to collect enough data to declare it a nature park. The canyon part of the Rakitnica Valley covers an area of 54 square kilometers. The largest area is occupied by this central section. It's extremely complex and extremely vertically dissected as a result of neotectonic movements. Driving this section was a lot of fun. A relatively even and wide, just right dirt road meandered with an unlimited number of bends along a rock ledge carved into the slope of the Vrańskie Stienie mountain. I would probably have a different opinion if I had to drive here in the thick fog or during heavy rainfall and limited visibility, but this time the weather was perfect. Here I wasn't particularly interested in the views and preferred to keep an eye on me rather than looking out the window. But she seldom did it while driving, so it wasn't surprising at all. As you can see, earlier scrambling through dense undergrowth had pulled the prowler's scalp off in the form of scrapped snorkel tip. This has happened before, so I secured it with the zip tie, which worked perfectly here. The ecosystem of this canyon is the habitat of over 30 types of endemic plant species and numerous endemic animal species. Bears, wolves, wild boars, weasels and wild goats have found shelter here. The crystal clear water is drinkable along the entire current, and its temperature during summer varies between 10 and 14 degrees. For the last several years, local mountaineers and local guides began to take the first tourists to the canyon. These expeditions are becoming more frequent, but still only a few hundred people have entered the canyon so far. The term tourist is a bit of a misnomer because the trip is very demanding and not without risk. Two rock walls hundreds of meters high mean that there is no way out of here other than reaching the mouth of the Red Fault. We covered the next 26 kilometers in almost 2 hours. Up to the intersection of the R4360 road we do not encounter any difficulties, but after passing the village of Krupak, heading south, we enter a route that seems to be much less frequented. Well, yes, my bad. I just didn't notice that the furrow on this road, probably caused by intense water courses, was so deep. Such experiences only remind us that overlanding away from frequented trails requires even more attention than usual, and you should not take your eyes off the road too often, which can be difficult with the beautiful views around us. In this episode, let me invite you to a slightly longer driving views than usual. A bit of a model from episode 5 in which I show the example of our lazy morning a bit longer, but also because this day was almost all filled with driving. I think it's worth showing you what really takes up a huge part of time during such trips. That is, the driving itself and everything that comes with it. The ride does not always take place along the ridges from which there are postcard views. Often, to reach those beautiful places, we go along similar trails, where the main attraction is to focus on the road and carefully observe the surroundings. But I really like such trails. Nowadays, it's really hard to become an explorer, well, unless you practice deep-sea diving. That word still hides many secrets. But riding these types of trails is kind of explorer's own world. I have no idea what will emerge from the thicket in the wild. Moreover, I have no idea what awaits me around the next corner, so the tension resulting from these unknowns is somehow addictive. On the map you can see the route I planned at home. We were more or less in this place when we again encountered an obstacle in the form of a fallen tree. And this time the plan was exactly the same. Attach the winch rope to the trunk and pull the obstruction to the side so that it could be avoided. Well, it can't be done effectively without locking the winch brake. will speed it up a bit and spare you this time winding the rope on the winch. Not too discouraged by these small obstacles, or maybe even slightly encouraged, wondering what awaits us next, we continue our exploration along this increasingly demanding trail. The roadside vegetation starts to prevail on the trail more and more, trying to lash my face from time to time, but I'm vigilant. We are going higher and higher, and I can feel it not only when I see how the road rises, but also with each turn, which the defender cannot take at once. The turning radius of this tank leaves much to be desired, and maneuvering is often more demanding than with other civilized cars. Scattered stones begin to appear on the road, which forces a light slalom ride. Of course, this is nothing strange on such a trail, but makes me a bit more focused, mainly for Kira's comfort. Poor girl, she has no idea why everything around is shaking so much, and she's probably just waiting for this torment to end. This small conifer, which grew in the middle of the road, would be hard to pass over, so I tried to take it between the wheels as gently as possible, hoping that I will not break it and it wouldn't feel my harsh treatment too much. Well, it seemed like the farther we went, the harder it got. The road was starting to be cut with water-drowned furrows. To make it easier, there was a precipice on the left side dangerously close to the road, towards which the furrows converged, so the prowler swaying over them caused me a little anxiety. Not only in me, Kira was also starting to wriggle in her seat. Yep, another turn to be overcome in two. As a matter of fact, I was starting to get used to it, but taking into consideration my injured right hand and the need to drive mainly with the left one, I can't say that it didn't bother me. As you can see, the trail became more and more demanding. In some places, the car barely fit between the rocks lying on the road. In others, it barely fit on the trail itself, because the rock ledge was simply so narrow. The rock material spilling from the walls made it often necessary to drive over it on one side, and then the problem leaned toward the abyss. And to be honest, I just hoped that the edge of the road was hard enough that it wouldn't suddenly collapse under the weight of the car, because it would be the last trip for sure. Of that, I have no doubts. Since we are still no farther than 5 kilometers from the Neretva River, I will tell you this historical curiosity. Neretva was once a separate district. The earliest mention of the Neretva district is in the chronicles written in the mid-12th century, where it is said that it was part of the Podgoria district, which together with the land of Ham, Trebinia and Zeta formed a tetrarchy or federation of 4 districts, each of which was a semi-independent county or state. By the mid-11th century, the county was probably incorporated into the Bosnian state by political agreement. From that time until the ban, Governor Foko took power in 1353, he enjoyed a special status in the Bosnian state. In the 15th century, the Neretva county was divided into Bosnian and Herzegovinian parts, and the border between them was the Neretva River. After this short digression, we returned to the trail. Another tight corner, and more furrows, where we even managed to lose the traction for a fraction of a second. Would you follow that trail, or you consider it too risky? Let me know in the comments. I must admit that with every 100 meters we drove, I felt more and more tired. The constant tension accompanying the obstacles being overcome, and the constant waiting for what will happen to us again around the next corner, began to be really tiring, and caused internal tension. Not to mention the awareness that we were on a really dangerous trail and each mistake could be the last one. In addition, we spent almost the entire previous day in the car, and I felt a little guilty towards Kira, who had to endure the hardship of this journey with nothing in return, because the views outside the window did not interest her. I was trying to think about Lake Alagovac, where I planned to spend the night, and about a moment of relaxation for both of us, but until then, we still had to deal with the terrain. At this point, it got very tight and very narrow. The trail looked as if no one had passed this way in a long time, and that worried me a bit. We drove on a quite demanding terrain up to here, and I would really not like to fight any more obstructions, or find out that the trail turns to hiking trail. But
Oh yeah. Hell.
stay tuned for what happened next in the next episode.